President of the United States of America, Kent Dawson.
She's missing. She went for a run. Never came home.
Behind the gates where the
Kristen, this was not random.
Where is she?
houses shine.
John, she was pregnant.
Every secret has a friend.
You promised me she wouldn't be hurt.
Is dressed in white.
So for Dad, I'm done. You think it's that simple, do you? You are destined to be president. What do you know about Kent Dawson, Don?
Angels fall. They smile for the cameras. They pray.
It's the job of my friends and me here to protect the next president.
As I said, gentlemen, be careful getting home. These roads can be dangerous at night.
The other blood sample got a hit. The suspect's being held at the Tombs. We need to get there.
Was he in on it? Had to be.
We can make them present this case to a grand jury.
Hearts disappear.
Today, the U.S. Attorney's Office has called a 7 a.m. press conference concerning a major political figure.
Everyone fears.
Palmer! You're not President Dawson.
All right, joining us now is the lawyer who has successfully defended Daniel Penny. And we didn't talk about that a lot on this show, but we did talk about it several times, what I think was an injustice. And so we wanted to talk to him about the trial and what is happening now. There is a civil case that he's still defending him against. And he's also written a book, and that looks very fascinating. It's a book called Tuxedo Park. It just came out yesterday. It is a fictional book. It's not about the Daniel Penny case, but I think it lays out his view of the profession of being a lawyer. I'm very interested in talking to him because he's been on both sides of this coin. He's been both a prosecutor and a defense attorney. So joining us now is Thomas Kenniff. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Yeah, so good to be here.
Before we talk about the Daniel Penny case, let's talk a little bit about the different roles of prosecutors and defense attorneys, because you've been on both sides of that. When you were a JAG officer in the military, you were involved in both prosecutions and defense. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's I started my career, at least my career in criminal law, as a prosecutor. I was hired by Janine Pirro in Westchester, who was then the elected district attorney of Westchester County here in New York. And then I somewhat roughly simultaneously with that, I commissioned as an officer into the New York Army National Guard JAG Corps. And I was almost immediately deployed to war in Iraq. I served for a year in the Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2005. And I was more on a prosecutorial side in the JAG Corps, as I had been in the district attorney's office. And then, after a few years, I kind of made the transition over to defense, which is not uncommon. And it is interesting to get to see both sides of the criminal justice system. I think in both instances, it's about justice, but as a prosecutor, you're really kind of representing the system and representing law and order, so to speak. In a more general sense, I mean, you do develop a relationship sometimes with the victims of the crime or their families. But you're not representing an individual like you are in the case of a defense attorney. So as a defense attorney, things become much more personal, and you have that feeling of, hey, I have an individual's life in my hands, and that's a tremendous responsibility. Yeah. We just watched a movie, and I forget what it was about a decade old, and it had Tom Cruise in it. It began with a defense attorney getting into a cab, and she's talking about, this guy I know that I'm defending, he's innocent, and I just don't feel like I've done a good enough job. It's going to haunt me over this. And I guess that really is the case as well when you are defending somebody that you think is innocent. Was that the case certainly with Daniel Penny? Well, it was certainly the case with Daniel Penny. And David, one of the questions I get most frequently is, well, and I think every defense attorney gets this at cocktail parties or social engagements, is, well, how do you defend those people, or how do you defend someone when you know they're guilty?
Yeah, that's the other
and the
side.
answer I always give is, the hardest thing to do is to represent someone you know is innocent.
Mm-hmm.
As a defense attorney, is you got to zealously represent your client, whether you like them or not, whether you think they're guilty or innocent or somewhere in between. Part of what you're doing is defending the Constitution of the United States and their rights under it. But if you're representing someone who's really not a great person, and you know that they've quote unquote done it, you're probably not going to wake up at night in cold sweats if the jury gets it wrong. But when you have someone like Daniel Penny,
Mm-hmm.
It's really the most difficult thing that any lawyer can be called upon to do.
I imagine. Yeah. When you're defending somebody that you think is guilty, that did it, in a sense, as you point out, you're defending the Constitution, you're defending the rule of law. And that's really important, because that really is about defending innocent people in general. And I've had a discussion about some of the cases that I've talked about on the show here. Obviously, it looks like the person did the crime, but and people get upset with me about that, because I say, yeah, but we got to follow due process. You can't just ship them abroad or whatever you feel like doing to them. I mean, we don't want to have a lynch mob society, especially when it's being run from the top. That's very dangerous. But
absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. And the minute we start only providing zealous defense for people that look kind of innocent,
mm-hmm.
is the moment your entire justice system is gone, because history is replete with examples of individuals who at the time were considered totally contemptible, totally undeserving of representation or mercy or anything of the like. And then you look back on it and say, well, thank goodness those people had a defense, or they really should have had a defense. Maybe they didn't get it. And,
mm-hmm.
So you have to treat, I always say it's sort of like a doctor in a triage unit or an emergency room.
That's right.
You could have a cold-blooded killer on the operating table, or you could have a Mother Teresa type person. Either way, you take out your tools and you get to work.
Yeah, that's right. Now, in your novel, your hero is a burned out ex-assistant district attorney. That's not autobiographical, is it?
Well, hey, look, I think, what I've learned on the writing journey, if that's what we're going to call it, is that any good writer is going to write a lot about what they know.
Yeah.
Or at least learn a lot about what they're writing about, so they know it. Always been kind of a history buff, and maybe, perhaps I'd like to write a book about Abraham Lincoln or something, but I don't have hours to sit in a research library. I mean, I barely have hours to sit in a law library because I'm so busy. So I decided to, I had a concept, and I said, let me write, I'll write about what I know. And, the book deals with sort of a prosecutor who becomes disenchanted, and then is sort of drawn into moonlighting again as a prosecutor, on the case of a estranged, teenage girlfriend of his from 20 years earlier that wound up, that goes missing, and it's an abduction that then becomes a suspected murder. And as he's sort of unraveling the clues and the evidence, it begins to lead back to the front runner for the presidential election, who then becomes the president-elect. And it's now he's in a race against time to try and stop this individual from taking the White House, before Inauguration Day.
That's a great premise.
It's spicy, I think.
Yeah.
It is that I was once a young prosecutor in New York. This case is about a young prosecutor. It's fictional,
Mm-hmm.
but I certainly, I think I wove a good amount of my personal experiences and my professional experiences into it.
Yeah, we talked about the defense side of it, but when we look at the prosecution side of it and what might burn somebody out, with the case of Daniel Penny, everybody was just astounded that they didn't give him a medal. Instead, they indicted him. And I guess that's the other issue. Going back to that case, let's talk a little bit about the specifics of the Daniel Penny case. Just remind the audience, in case they don't know, some of the details of what happened with that.
Yeah, so Daniel Penny is was and is a former Marine, although Marines are never former Marines, they're Marines, but he'd served his 4 years in the Marine Corps. He enlisted right out of high school, which is not, so common in, for someone who goes to a suburban high school along Long Island, New York, as opposed to maybe other parts of the country. So it was a courageous, selfless act, as it is for anybody who takes the oath and is willing to serve the country in any capacity. He returned after his 4-year deployment. He was well commended, well decorated for his time in the Marines. But he decided to re-enter civilian life. He came back here to the New York area where he was from. He enrolled in a city college in Brooklyn, Brooklyn Tech, and took an apartment in downtown Manhattan and was doing what college kids do. He was working a part-time job, using his GI Bill, and looking to get his education and make a life for himself after the Marines. Unfortunately, he encountered an individual by the name of Jordan Nealy, who was to call him a recidivist offender would be to minimize it. He was really one of the city's most prolific criminals and one of the most dangerously psychotic individuals on the street. Those aren't just my words. That's how he was listed in NYPD profiles and so forth. And when Jordan Nealy entered a subway in the afternoon in Manhattan, when Danny was on his way back from class, he made very clear that his intention was to do harm to the men, women, and children on that subway train. Danny, selflessly stepped in to subdue this individual. Unfortunately, in the aftermath of the encounter, Jordan Nealy died, and that's tragic, as is any death. But it was not certainly not what Danny intended, and the evidence at trial even showed that it wasn't what he caused. Jordan Nealy died of factors that weren't related or weren't caused by the restraint that Danny used.
That's interesting. And then why was he prosecuted? I mean, he was not arrested on the spot, right?
No, he wasn't. In fact, what happened was he was utterly cooperative. He waited on the scene for many minutes, upwards of 10 minutes from the time the encounter ended and the police finally showed up. He was very concerned for Jordan Nealy. No one thought that Jordan Nealy had died of a chokehold at that point. In fact, the police were administering Narcan. The emergency room records, indicated initially the cause of death was an overdose, because he did have a lot of drugs in the system. And Danny, being very cooperative, tells the police what happened on the subway station. Is all on body-worn camera, by the way, and he accompanies them voluntarily back to the police precinct, where he's debriefed by two seasoned detectives for about an hour. Tells them exactly how things played out, and they send him home. And that was where it was, at least for a few days. And even when I initially spoke with the prosecutor that was originally assigned to this case, assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office that I've dealt with before, and was a reasonable person. The original overtures from the DA's office was, look, we're going to take our time with this. We want to do a long and thorough investigation. Maybe next month we'll have a meeting in my office, or in our office among the attorneys, and we'll kind of see where things go. They weren't pledging never to prosecute him, but there was certainly no indication there was any urgency. And then what happened, of course, the politicians, the agenda-driven politicians, the activists, the Al Sharptons of the world, the BLM, the Black Lives Matters, started ratcheting up the rancor, if you will. There was a protest at the subway station, where the protesters went on the tracks to block the trains. And now it's just the drumbeat was loud and steady. And within a day or two of the call I just described, I got another call and saying, yeah, well, sorry, the orders come from the top. Your client's got to surrender tomorrow. And at that point, well, what are you going to do? Say no? Wow.
So the DA's Alvin Bragg at that point, right? And
yes.
Yeah. And so
I'm not dealing with him correctly, but it's his, it was his office.
Right. And it got a lot of attention on both sides, and everybody was really amazed that they would prosecute him. But of course, as you're talking about, it was very political. And what was the political context at the time? Wasn't that around the time of George Floyd as well?
Well, it was much closer to it, and we all know how things can change. How quickly things can change, just based on individual incidents and also just the public mood, if you will. In May of 2023 was a different time than May of 2025 or May of 2026. Not that we've by any means overcome our issues as a society, but at that point there was still very much a fervor to prejudging guilt in any kind of cross-racial case where there's the death of a black person, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of whether there's justification or not. The BLM movement still had a lot of gusto behind it. The George Floyd situation, and I think since then people have a lot of people have started to take a more nuanced view of all that. Step back, so look, is this there may have been tragedy here, but was it everything that it was suggested to be? But in May of 2023, we had all that headwind in our face, and we were also, dealing with a borough that politically is arguably is more liberal than any place in the country as far as voter registration and so forth. So there were a lot of people that said that, well, you're never going to get a fair trial in this case. It doesn't in this venue in the city. Doesn't matter what the facts are.
Yeah, and we look at this. If I remember correctly, I think there was a guy who was helping Daniel that was black himself, wasn't there?
Yeah, he was certainly a darker, skinned Hispanic individual. And again, look, I don't think any of this should matter.
I don't think it was racial at all, and that's what everybody's looking at. It was made racial, for political reasons.
But it's certainly appropriate when when one side tries to racialize it, to point out that, wait a second, and more than the individuals that were helping him, the train itself. I mean, this is a Midtown Manhattan on a weekday. The subway car is not populated with all white people.
That's right.
Yet be on a New York City subway train that is. It's about as diverse as you can get. Black, white, Asians, Hispanic, and everyone on that train. I mean, virtually without exception, applauded what Danny did. In fact, there were black people, men and women, that stayed around to talk to the police to say, look, he was trying to help us. He didn't do anything wrong. This other guy was a scary, he was seething. He was going to hurt someone. And that played out again at the trial. I mean, one of the important things that, I knew one of our missions, one of our objectives, myself and the legal team at trial, was we said, well, we have to put the jury box in that subway car and let them, see what the passengers saw, feel what they felt, sense what they sensed, same way Danny had experienced all that, and the bystanders, because there was an attempt by the DA's office as well. He was, Jordan Nealy was a bad, was saying things, and he had a record, but this is just another, guy on the New York City subway carrying on, and we had these witnesses come in again. It was a black woman who testified before the jury. She said, look, I've been riding the subway for 50 years, my whole life. I've been personally accosted on the subway. People try to sexually assault me on the subway. None of those incidents scared me like Jordan Nealy scared me. It was very powerful.
Wow.
And her words were echoed in so many ways by so many other witnesses.
Yeah, it was a righteous cause defending him. It absolutely was. Of course, as we're talking about before, you work with the system that is there. He certainly was no Luigi, was he? Mangione.
No, and you gotta, you can't. There, I think there's a temptation to lump, criminal defendants or into the same box. Say, well, he did, very different facts and circumstances.
Well, it surprises me how many people have defended Luigi and donated money to him as well. And of course, even though he was acquitted, Daniel Penny's still facing a civil lawsuit, and you were involved in helping him with that as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a lot of people who aren't involved or follow the legal system closely or aren't lawyers don't realize that there are there are two systems of justice. There's a criminal and a civil.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have a situation where even though someone is fully acquitted, as Daniel Penny was on the criminal case, that they can still face a civil lawsuit. Doesn't mean the lawsuit has merit, doesn't mean it's going to be successful. In fact, we're quite confident that it won't be in this case for all the reasons the criminal case wasn't successful, but for the prosecution. There's not an absolute bar on it. It's not a double jeopardy situation. The classic example is the O.J. Simpson case.
Yeah.
Again, although I'm loath to mention O.J. Simpson in the same breath as the client, because
Daniel was not O.J. Yeah.
Two utterly disparate situations. But the point is that these lawsuits happen. Sometimes they have merit, other times they don't. I would say that this is an indication where the lawsuit that does not have merit, I think it smacks of opportunism among that was driven by some people with political agendas, and some people just want to try to profit off a tragedy.
Let's talk a little bit about the guy who started all this stuff. His name was Jordan Nealy, was it? And he died now. What did they rule the death was from?
So, it's interesting because they originally, they originally indicated it with the original autopsy report said, cause unknown, indicate a homicide, but, a homicide is in terms of forensic pathology, is a death by unnatural causes. All right. Yeah. It is not a legal conclusion, as in, people try to equate it with murder. Now, a homicide used in a different context in a courtroom has a different meaning. But they were the original autopsy report, which we cross-examined. My partner Stephen Razor cross-examined the city medical examiner very adeptly on this. Confronted her with it. Said, we're waiting toxicology because they too, of course, were under the impression that Jordan Nealy may have overdosed. That's what everyone believed at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then within about 24 hours, they then amended their cause of death, which was long before the toxicology was back. And we, I think suggested, I think it was quite apparent that the medical examiner's office became politicized, just like the district attorney's office did in this case, and basically yielded to political pressure, both internal and external.
Wow. Now, he had a long rap sheet, didn't he? And what does that tell us about our justice system in general? How many times somebody can be arrested and released, or if somebody has a mental issue and they put them on the street, what does that say about that?
Well, it shows that it's an abject failure, and I don't think anybody can even seriously try to argue differently unless they're really arguing their agenda. There is a woke, progressive criminal justice agenda that has taken hold in the city. That includes a large contingent, by the way, that believe that no one should ever be sent to jail under any circumstances.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
First degree murder.
No bail. Yeah. Just let everybody out.
Yeah. You'd like to, say, well, those are the extremists. And they certainly are, but the reality is that, once those quote unquote extremists have gotten such a foothold and such influence that you can't really call them extremists anymore, because they are, within this political culture in this city and many others, they represent, at least something that is a viewpoint that's become much more mainstream. I mean, as difficult as that can be for any reasonable person to wrap their head around. Jordan Nealy was, in fact, they got a bench warrant out for him for a felony assault he had committed on the subway against a woman in her 60s, where he bashed her face in.
Wow.
He had 50 some odd other arrests and convictions. Those are only the offenses we know about. I mean, people think that any contact with the criminal justice system results in a record. That's far from the truth, particularly in this town. And then more than that, and these things are really in his case, were joined at the hip, as they often are. He was deeply psychotic. He was considered one of the most psychotic people, walking the streets, because of paranoid schizophrenia, which of course is not his fault. Jordan Nealy, the system in many ways failed him. Perhaps, long before he saw the inside of a jail cell, he should have been institutionalized and gotten the psychiatric treatment that he needed. People with paranoid schizophrenia can't self-regulate. They need to be, dealt with in a custodial setting, at least until you stabilize them, and then they need to be closely monitored. None of that was done here, and it's a story that's repeated day after day after day. In a lot of big cities in America, certainly including New York City.
Yeah, we have this catch and release justice system, if you will. And then we have a just let everybody out of the mental institutions on the other side. And many times we have, as you point out, like in this individual, the two of those things converge, don't they? It is an amazing case. And certainly we hope that this works out well for Daniel Penny. Is there a GoFundMe for him?
Yeah, there's a GoFundMe that's been set up for a while. It's been very successful. It's been quiet lately because a lot of people just assume, well, the legal matter is over. But the reality is that he is still defending this civil suit. It takes a lot of resources, not just the lawyers, but the experts and all else. So I would encourage everybody to take a look at the GoFundMe. I'm sorry, Give Send Go, not GoFundMe.
Oh, okay.
Give Send Go. Even though you'll see that he's raised a lot of money already, understand that he's, in the midst of a second major legal battle, and anybody who can contribute is doing a good thing for, someone who tried to do and did do the right thing for others selflessly.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, we've had the new mayor of New York, Mamdani, has said that he wants to get more police out of the subway, and he wants to have citizens take up some more response to that. I wonder who the next Daniel Penny is going to be.
Well, you also wonder, how many Daniel Pennies are we going to have left? I mean, certainly, because the system does so much through an unjust prosecution like this to deter, decent people, good Samaritans, from standing up, because they know that even if it goes right and they're able to protect people, they could wind up facing, the working end of a criminal indictment. So it's a terrible thing. You have a situation where you step in the gap and you put your life at risk and you help people, and then the system comes after you. And when people look at that, they're even less likely to step up and do anything about it, aren't they? Yeah, absolutely. And it's very difficult, trying to change the system, trying to go up against the system. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of what Tuxedo Park is about, my book. It's the idea that you have a prosecutor, but he's sort of, because he's going against the grain of what the political establishment wants, is trying to protect their own, he winds up, being not part of the system, but trying to fight against it to get justice. And, as I said before, I chose to write about, things I lived, things I've experienced. So it's a fictional book, but the themes that the protagonist is dealing with are ones that happen in real life, in courts in throughout this country, probably beyond. And it's an important theme. Somebody who is willing to try to protect others, like a Daniel Penny, even at tremendous cost to themselves.
Yes. Well, it sounds like a fascinating premise, and certainly you know your stuff. The book is Tuxedo Park. It just came out yesterday. We noticed that it was available as an audiobook as well. So that's something for people to think about. Tuxedo Park, and we're talking to the author here, Mr. Kenniff, and first name is Thomas, right? Yes, Thomas Kenniff. That's Kenniff, and the book is Tuxedo Park. Sounds like a fascinating premise for a book, and again, you are somebody who has lived that experience. It should be a very interesting novel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, David. And, the book is available on, really across platforms. Amazon seems to be the place to go these days. Mm-hmm. We also have a great website, tuxedoparkbook.com.
Oh, good. Yeah, we'll put that in the notes.
Yeah, we have and there's a great book trailer on there, very cinematic. So that in itself is worth checking it out. But,
That's great.
Go on there and buy the book, tuxedoparkbook.com, or go straight to Amazon. This is going to be a very exciting read for anybody who loves the sort of subject matter that we're covering on your show. That's
great. Yeah, it is always a wonderful, fertile ground for intrigue, isn't it, in the legal system? It is. It looks like it's one of those. tuxedoparkbook.com. Thank you so much, Thomas Kenniff. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for what you did for Daniel Penny as well. It's good to see justice served every once in a while, even if it's difficult for the people who have to go through it. I know it's an ordeal, even if you're acquitted. But thank you for that, and I'm very glad that you were successful with that. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Great being here.
Thank you. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at davidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. davidknightshow.com.